Despite Thiel's orders to stop, the mercenaries who weren't paid on time enacted brutal violence on the unfortunate inhabitants of Magdeburg. A census taken the next year showed that out of the roughly 25,000 inhabitants before the sack, only 449 remained.
Bro. No way. What the hell? What the hell? So you're telling me 99.9% of the city was essentially wiped out? Holy 30 Years War continuing the series. Might have to continue a few other series after this. I'm not sure. I'm trying to like do recommendations and suggestions that people have for me, as well as series that I'm really behind on. So sometimes you might have to remind me, because sometimes I get too caught up with doing suggestions that people want me to do that I kind of forget series that I was supposed to be doing. Very important that you remind me sometimes.
In our previous video, we covered the Danish portion of the 30 Years' War. In his capacity as the Duke of Holstein, Christian IV of Denmark had intervened on behalf of the Protestant cause, but was defeated. However, Albrecht von Wallenstein had failed in his attempts to construct an imperial fleet in the Baltic Sea and to capture the city of Stralsund, which Sweden had then garrisoned. In this episode,
I like this music.
Will intensify further into a full-scale
I just hope it's not
European
copyrighted.
war with the invasion of King Gustavus Adolphus of Sweden.
Okay, I heard about this guy. The guy was like a Swedish Frodo Napoleon or something.
Had become increasingly concerned by the empire's situation during the 1620s. Indeed, Sweden had already undertaken a small intervention in the defense of Stralsund in the summer of 1628. Denmark's defeat at Wallenstein's hands and Spain's continuing Dutch war had raised the
Gotta react to the 80 Years' War.
campaign of economic warfare.
Gotta react to that. I genuinely do not know how the Netherlands got independence from Spain. Like, all I heard is the Dutch fought the 80 Years' War, and that was it. I never really understood how that whole thing went down. I'll be honest with you.
Ferdinand would ally with the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, whose ruler, Sigismund III, had a claim to the Swedish throne. The King of Sweden, Gustavus II Adolphus, had been in constant conflict with the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth ever since he took the throne in 1611, and was largely successful, especially in the War of 1626 to 1629. The Truce of Altmark between the two sides was signed in 1629. It, being negotiated by French diplomats, stipulated that the Swedes would receive the right to 2/3 of all shipping tolls at Polish-Lithuanian ports until 1635, which helped finance Sweden's war effort substantially. Though the armies fighting for Holy Roman Emperor Ferdinand II had won victories at Lutter and Wolgast, the pressures and costs of maintaining such a large army were beginning to mount. The emperor had chosen to rule by decree, which didn't help his popularity with the princes of the empire. So in summer of 1630, the Diet of Regensburg was convened in an attempt to placate the regional princes. Notably, the rulers of Brandenburg and Saxony did not attend in protest of the Edict of Restitution. This diet only made the situation worse, as the electors who hated Albrecht von Wallenstein forced Ferdinand to dismiss him, and he retired to his Bohemian estates. The imperial army was also massively downsized in order to reduce costs, with the Count of Thiel being reinstated as supreme commander of the imperial army, as well as the Catholic League army. It created a massive power vacuum, along with alienating the Protestant princes further. The emperor sacrificed Wallenstein and became weaker domestically to retain the Edict of Restitution, but this encouraged external powers to join the conflict. In early June of 1630, Gustavus Adolphus published a manifesto detailing the advance of imperial forces to the Baltic, the treatment of Swedish delegates, and imperial aggression against the Swedish Stralsund garrison as reasons for the intervention. On June 26th, he started his campaign against Ferdinand by landing on the island of Usedom off the Pomeranian coast, with a modest force of 14,000 soldiers.
That's not really modest. That's kind of sizable.
After disembarking his
A
army,
modest force is like half of that, maybe 7,000 or 5,000, somewhere around
Adolphus
there.
marched to Stettin and told the Duke of Pomerania, Bogislav XIV, who was childless, that Pomerania was his by right of conquest. On August 25th, the beset Duke accepted the Treaty of Stettin, which allowed Sweden to effectively annex the region. However, the new territory was too small and poor to sustain a large army, and the invaders struggled to break out of the imperial cordon. Throughout the rest of 1630, repeated unsuccessful attempts to punch through the imperial troops, commanded by Torquato Conti, were made at Mecklenburg in the west and along the Oder in the east. This lackluster start from the Swedes would inspire a false confidence in Ferdinand II that was soon to be tested. Another problem was soon to arise for Ferdinand. France, a fellow Catholic nation, under its first minister, Cardinal Richelieu. The French were concerned about the growing power of their old Habsburg rivals, and sought to deplete their strength by any means necessary. The Treaty of Barvalde in January of 1631 obliged Sweden to maintain an army of at least 36,000 troops in the German conflict, while France paid 400,000 thalers per year in subsidies to Sweden to assist in its upkeep. Still, the leading Lutheran German princes, the electors of Saxony and Brandenburg, would not form an alliance with the Swedes, who were initially viewed as an unwelcome foreign presence. Instead, on April 12, 1631, they issued the Leipzig Manifesto, and this agreement became a Protestant defensive alliance against any who might endanger them, Sweden or the Emperor. 40,000 troops would be raised for the cause, an action sanctioned by many of the moderate Catholics who understood the desire for safety.
40,000 troops, holy bro. Ooh, that's
a
lot.
Gustavus Adolphus now numbered 30,000 men. The Protestant princes who had met at Leipzig now had no interest in an alliance with Sweden, so the king had to undertake a forceful approach to woo them. To this end, the newly reinforced Swedish army advanced south into Brandenburg in April 1631, capturing and sacking the towns of Kustrin and Frankfurt an der Oder, which were defended by imperial garrisons. Though he had begun to make slow progress, it was far too little and far too late for the only significant Swedish ally thus far, the city of Magdeburg, which had declared for Sweden in mid-1630. Reinforcements brought to the city's siege by the Count of Thiel eventually managed to enter the city on the 20th of May, 1631. What followed was the single most horrific massacre of the entire 30 Years' War.
Oh my god, here we go.
Flames claimed many lives, but more notorious was the conduct of the mercenary soldiers. Despite Thiel's orders to stop, the mercenaries who weren't paid on time enacted brutal violence on the unfortunate inhabitants of Magdeburg. A census taken the next year showed that out of the roughly 25,000 inhabitants before the sack, only 449 remained.
Bro. No way. What the hell? What the hell? So you're telling me 99.9% of the city was essentially wiped out? Holy I don't think, yo, guys, think about so many modern warfares with machine guns, bombing raids. Think of any modern warfare, bro, like that. It doesn't matter what it is. Think of something like gruesome, like Vietnam. America dropped a load of bombs, more bombs in Korea and Vietnam than in World War II combined. separately. Okay, so both of them, the Korean War and the Vietnam War, America dropped a load of bombs. And even then, I don't even think the outcome was as horrific as what I just heard here. Hell, even in World War II, I mean, some small villages, some small villages, sure, but that's villages, bro. This is a whole city. This is an entire city. This is an entire city. And this isn't even like modern period. This is early modern history. So they don't even have the technology. What the hell? That's why this is insane to me. Essentially, without machine guns, without bombs, the closest thing to bombs that they had were small grenades and essentially artillery. What the hell? This has to be the most insane thing that I've ever heard. Like, I guys, I've read about so many massacres, reacted to so many massacres. Hell, when I reacted to the Huns, right? And it talked about how they freaking massacred parts of what's now Bulgaria today that didn't recover for 70 years. You know, that was crazy in on itself, but like those were just villages, right? I don't think if I'm wrong, again, this is what the comments are for. If I'm wrong, you can provide your examples for me, but I do not think there has been a time that I know of in modern history with machine guns, airplanes with bombs, hell, even ships with bombs at this point now, where an entire city was essentially wiped out. Like an entire city wiped out. Hell, even when Germany invaded the Soviet Union in World War II and they wanted to exterminate the Eastern Slavs, I don't think they even went as far as this. And their whole goal was to wipe out the Slavs. That's why this is mad. And the fact that, again, this is 400 years ago pretty much. So technology wasn't even like as insane as it was today. So the fact that they could do that, oh, bro. Wow. And you want to know what's also funny? Is how these are the same Europeans who would go and portray themselves as civilized. Or should I better say, Western Europeans that would go and portray themselves as civilized. Because again, Western Europeans, and honestly, I should go and do a whole video on this. Essentially, like, just talking about Western Europeans and their like ridiculous superiority complex. Because I hate it. A lot of Western Europeans have an insane superiority complex. They're so arrogant. You know, they think that they're so like righteous and civilized, and then you learn about Western European history, and this is, you know, the thing that you learn. The irony. Let's continue.
Had been utterly annihilated.
Yeah.
The news circulated all over Germany and Europe, shocking and outraging Protestants.
Yeah, a literal annihilation.
To the east, Gustavus Adolphus massed a 26,000-strong force outside the Electoral Palace in Berlin and forced George William of Brandenburg to ally with him. The Catholic butchery at Magdeburg, as well as a desire to keep pressure on Ferdinand, also convinced John George I, Elector of Saxony, to join Sweden's cause, bringing 18,000 troops with him. With his new allies and new forces, The Swedish king was now eager to push for a decisive blow, convinced a victory would make other German Protestants join him. Meanwhile, Thiel was also eager to pursue the offensive, and his masters believed that only a clear victory would deter others from joining the invader. The first great battle of the Swedish intervention was about to take place. Thiel's army, which was advancing to meet the Swedes, dispatched smaller parties which engaged in skirmishes with them, and the Swedes apparently got the better of these encounters. Gustavus crossed the Elbe at Wittenberg and moved south to join with his German allies. Finally, the two sides converged on a broad plain near the village of Breitenfeld in September of 1631. Now we must take a moment to discuss the army and state which engaged at Breitenfeld on that day in 1631 and its illustrious leader. Since 1397, the three ancient Nordic kingdoms had been ruled by Denmark, but Sweden broke away in 1523 and elected Gustav Vasa as their king, beginning the Vasa dynasty. After a dynastic crisis, Charles IX became king, dying in 1611 and being succeeded by his son, Gustav II Adolf, otherwise known as Gustavus Adolphus. When this happened, the coffers were almost empty, the population was on the verge of rebellion, and the army was lax. The military failures of Sweden at this time were exemplified in the Battle of Kirkholm during 1605, when its army was annihilated by a Polish-Lithuanian force one-third its size.
Golly, bro.
Conscription had taken place.
Speaking of that name, Adolphus, do anyone even name their children Adolf anymore? I don't think anyone. Yeah, the more I think about it, because I know recently there was this one African guy who had the same exact name as the dictator of Germany from World War II, but I mean, he's all the way in Africa, so he's like, who cares? But like, I'm talking like, do any like white people name their kids like Adolf or any name? I mean, Adolphus is, ugh. I'm reading the freaking H like it's the freaking Cyrillic N. That's why it's Adolphus. That's funny. But Adolphus is basically the same name as Adolf. I'm pretty sure. I think nobody don't really ever name their children Adolf anymore. Yeah. That's such a good name too, Adolf. Adolf is such a good name. Oh, that's so sad. What a good name, bro. Ruin.
In Sweden for decades, but it was poorly administered. Gustavus Adolphus established and enforced guidelines for recruitment, while the realm was divided up into 8 military districts from which a permanently established army would be raised. Intensive training and drill routines made this system greatly successful, and foreigners marveled at how mere farmers' lads could be turned into disciplined soldiers. Increased firepower was a key priority for Gustavus Adolphus, who realized that it was the key to victory and was required to compensate for the inferiority of Swedish cavalry. Infantry squadrons maintained the central pike block flanked by musketeers, but with a higher proportion of muskets compared to pikes. Formations were also shallower and broader, bringing more firepower to bear on the enemy. The countermarch was also drilled into the soldiers, during which the front rank would fire a volley and then march through the gaps to the rear to reload, followed by the second rank, and so on. Doubling the files was also a new tactic developed by the king, during which the rear ranks would step into the gaps used for the countermarch in order to deliver a devastating salvo. In addition to the infantry changes, batteries of 4 light 3-pounder artillery pieces were attached to Swedish regiments. They were maneuverable above all else in order to go where they were needed on the battlefield, compared to the heavy cannons which had to stay where they were. The Protestant army, led by Swedish King Gustavus Adolphus, consisted of around 42,000 troops. 24,000 Swedish veteran soldiers were joined by 18,000 under the Elector of Saxony.
That is kind of a huge number right there.
Were organized into 7 infantry brigades in 2 lines, commanded by Gustavus Adolphus himself. They had 51 field artillery pieces, supported by a battery of 4 state-of-the-art mobile bronze-cast 3-pounder light guns attached to each infantry regiment. Opposite them were the Imperials under Johann Surklaas Graf von Thiel, who had 35,000 men under his command, of whom 7,000 had just completed an exhausting march from the south. Their infantry was organized into 12 large
if that's the case, then I know how this battle is gonna end already. From the moment I heard exhausting march, I'm like, yeah, no. At 7,000, that's like 1/4 of the entire army. 7, 14, 21, 28, 30. 1/5 of the entire army, my bad.
threes, and with
I was almost right though.
On each flank.
Still though, that's not.
The Imperials had 27 field artillery pieces, likely of a heavier caliber than those of the Swedes.
Okay, that could honestly change the game when you usually have artillery advantage, but let's see.
And with a thunderous 2-hour-long exchange of artillery fire between the two sides. In addition to their numerical superiority in number of guns, the Swedes demonstrated fantastic efficiency, firing 3 to 5 volleys for each Imperial volley. The deeper and more densely packed Imperial tercios suffered especially badly from this bombardment. When the bombardment ceased, 4,000 Imperial Black Cuirassiers on Thiel's left wing charged without orders, commanded by Gottfried zu Pappenheim. Repeated attacks were made on the position of Field Marshal Johann Banner's Swedish cavalry, but to little effect. The small musketeer companies between each squadron of horse fired at point-blank range as the Imperial cavalry charged, disrupting them, blunting the attack, and allowing their own cavalry to countercharge with an advantage. After the 7th attempt to break his wing had failed, Banner sallied forth with his Finnish light cavalry and Swedish heavy cavalry, smashing the depleted Imperial horse and forcing it to flee the field. During this action, the main infantry force under Thiel had remained stationary. However, a subsequent cavalry charge on the Imperial right wing by another 4,000 Catholic League and Croat horse under von Furstenberg crashed into the Saxon cavalry guarding this area of the battlefield. Seeing an opportunity, Thiel then ordered his tercios to advance in an oblique order formation, diagonally and to the right. By doing this, he sought to concentrate his assault on the untrained Saxon infantry on the Protestants' left flank.
Yeah, but you still have all that, so
refusing to engage the Swedes for now. This worked out, and the entire Saxon force routed in front of them, leaving the Swedish flank exposed.
I guess here's the thing about concentration tactic. Concentrating all your forces on one place, it's really effective, and it could honestly, like, when you do it right, turn the tide of a battle. But that's when you do it right. You know. I honestly am shocked that even worked out, because I expected the other part of the army to react to that. I don't know. The thing about these battles is, it's one thing to demonstrate what went down, but we still don't really know, like, how the full battle felt, and this is why, because we don't know the space, like how it doesn't demonstrate how far the units truly were. So when they go and say that, oh, this flanking maneuver was pulled off, or whatever was pulled off, you know, it looks like this, like what just happened here, right? But it looks like these units are so close to each other. It's like, whoa, why wouldn't these units go and, you know, stop that from happening or reinforce that from happening. I guess I would just say because they were way more further than what I thought, right? But again, nobody, like, these videos don't really demonstrate that or show us that or even tell us like, yo, what you're seeing here isn't really like accurate. They were much more further than what you see or anything like that. So I don't know. And plus, we're like looking from literally like above. It's one thing to look from above, and when you're actually sitting on the, like, standing on the ground, there's terrain, trees, and all that stuff to that you have to consider as well. So
Gustav Horn, who commanded this threatened area of the Swedish line, quickly and orderly pulled back before the unwieldy tercios could regroup and change direction, as they were busy plundering the Saxon baggage.
Oh, let him cook!
Soldiers.
Let him cook!
He then launched a counter cavalry force.
Oh!
During this counterattack,
let him
the
cook!
engaged infantry regiments pivoted and concentrated their new high firepower tactics and their accompanying
clutch, bro! Clutch! This is probably the most clutch thing that I have seen someone done.
Threatening their left and repelled the imperial attack. At the same time, the victorious cavalry of Banner, now commanded directly by their king Gustavus Adolphus, swept across the front line and attacked the now lightly defended imperial left. This assault managed to achieve its aim of capturing the stationary imperial cannons, which were then turned by the Swedes and used to attack their owners.
GG. Yeah. And this is why I said what I said just now. Sure, concentrating stuff can work, but if you do it right, you have to do it right. If you don't, you're screwed.
Torstensson, commanding the Swedish field artillery, also maneuvered his lighter, more flexible guns into position and pummeled the Imperials as well.
GG. That
hours of this withering firepower, the Imperial forces finally collapsed, and Pappenheim, as well as Till himself, were both wounded. 7,600 Imperial soldiers were killed, and a further 6,000 were captured. The Catholic army had been utterly annihilated by the Swedish and their Saxon allies and had to be completely rebuilt from scratch, while the victory convinced many wavering Protestant princes to join the victors, swelling their army. After so many Catholic victories in the early years of the war, it seemed as though the Protestant cause was on the rise. Thanks to Squarespace for
Gustavus Adolphus! Okay. The proto-Swedish Napoleon. Okay, learning more about this guy. Yeah, so far he's proven himself. Like, when they first reacted to Julius Caesar, I was genuinely disappointed. And I'm saying this because I'm seeing Gustavus Adolphus in action here, and this is no disappointment. This is what I expected when I first reacted to Caesar. Like, I expect him to be instantly on it, but a lot of his victories, like, were just kind of... It's like, yeah, they were great, yeah, but, you know, not like this. Not like, you know... Like, do you see the way how he clutched up there? That is impressive, okay? If you have any suggestions for me, go comment down below. If you like my reactions and what I have to say in my reactions, go check out my other videos on my channel, of course. I have plenty of reactions on my channel on so many different topics at this point, man. Make sure you subscribe if you're new, like the video so that my stuff stays on the YouTube algorithm, man. Thank you for watching and goodbye.